The City Council will hold a hearing tomorrow on plans to close transitional shelter programs for homeless people in recovery. Officials say one reason for the closing is a shift in federal support, with more help going to permanent housing. And they say shelter and services are being lined up for current residents. But advocates are concerned about the need for more help and more stability. Joining us is a member of the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, ACT UP Boston, Robert Folan Johnson, and one of the program residents, Edwin Torres. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
I want to start with Rob. As far as the overview, we're talking about two programs located near Southampton Street. What are we talking about?
They're actually in the shelter,
yeah,
but they're on a different level, and the shelter has 2 floors to it. And the Safe Harbor and the SOAR programs are on the 2nd floor. The general population shelter is on the 1st floor, which has the majority of homeless members in it. And the program has different rules and regulations, so to speak, and has certain different advantages. It has case management and things like that as well, to help help the residents maintain stability and sobriety and the like within the program. In the meantime, they're transitioning from homelessness to finding housing or getting housing. That's something that is very important to maintain that stability, so they can focus on that with the help of the program itself. Sadly, the program is being eliminated, or both programs are being eliminated, and it's really the wrong time to do that. There's an opioid crisis that's killing 6 people a day in Massachusetts, and there's a crisis of homelessness among people with HIV in Boston, and here they are eliminating these programs that help people who either have the virus or who have substance abuse stay stable and get housing. So.
Edwin Torres, talk about the program that you've been in.
Well, I'm currently in the Safe Harbor program. I've been there 17 months. I mean, the program has been a great help to me. I got stability. I got a bed that I can count on every day to continue my life on while I get housing. I've been waiting for housing 17 months now. And they got case managers to deal with substance abuse. And a lot of the people in my program, because of the disease, medical condition we have, they can't make certain appointments, so they bring us. They make sure everybody is taken care of. So, I mean, and they also help us with housing. I mean, it's greater stability for us. It is a good program.
Have you ever been in a regular shelter at some point?
Just briefly.
What's the difference between this and a regular shelter?
Was a big difference, because what they call white shelters, you have to leave during the day. Not only that, but everybody in there is active, is using. And most people there, they're not going to stop. That's their life. They want to keep doing that. And there's not much help in a regular shelter for us.
Explain how bad that is if you're in a normal shelter and there might be somebody else who's using some kind of substance. I mean, does that make it more difficult for you to keep away from that sort of thing?
Well, definitely, because being an addict, living that life I lived all my life, to see it right in front of me, it's a lot harder. And then not knowing what's going to happen that day or the next day while I'm supposedly waiting for housing, which even so they say we're going to get it right away, it's not like that. It's still going to take a long time, anywhere from 6 months to a year. So, being in that environment for 6 months to a year, most of us are going to relapse, unfortunately.
Robert, explain the difference, because we've heard this principle of housing first and just getting, most homeless people into housing. It really stabilizes things, even if it doesn't cure all the problems. So why not just go with that?
Right. Well, this is Boston. Boston has some unique problems because of the real estate market and the like. So if you get a voucher, which Housing First provides, for example, a Housing First
This is a rental subsidy voucher.
A subsidy voucher. You have to find housing that the voucher covers. That's not easy to do. It's very difficult to find a 1-bedroom apartment that doesn't, for $1,500 a month, which vouchers generally go up to, that doesn't require you to go through a broker, which will be another $1,500, not to mention first and last month's rent and things like that. So that's for someone like Edwin has a voucher, and he's been searching and searching, as does a friend of mine who also is searching and searching and searching. And there's also the rapid rehousing problem, because they'll house people from these programs and sort of temporary housing, but there's no long-term follow-up because you don't have the security of a voucher, so you can maintain paying that rent, say 3 to 4 to 6 months down the road. And if you're not making enough money in this town to pay that rent when the rent is due, because it's $1,500 for a one-bedroom, you're going to often end up back on the streets and possibly back into the programs that are now being cut. So.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Robert Folan Johnson of ACT UP Boston and Edwin Torres about homeless recovery programs. Edwin, what about what you've heard from the city or people in your program about what's going to happen next? What have they told you?
Well, honestly, what I've heard is that June 30th is the budget is over for our program. So I haven't heard anything after that. But the way it seems is we're going to go into emergency shelter, regular shelter, in other words.
Robert, I know it's been said the city has had some advance warning that the federal funding was going to sort of dry up for these transitional programs. But where else was the money? I mean, you guys remember, this is not just an inside Boston problem. This is really at least a statewide problem, isn't it?
That's actually a good point. And certainly the city could try to find money out of its own budget, because these programs don't cost a lot. They're actually maintaining many of the staff members for this program. And there's going to be some of the structure left over from these two programs. But they're not going to have all that structure available and all the case management. And really, one of the really important things is how residents with HIV, for example, or people who are in recovery are going to have to going to stay in the regular shelter area, which is not a healthy place to be if you've got if you're immunocompromised or if you're fighting to stay in recovery. So. But as far as the state could certainly do more, step in. But the city should have. The city knew this was coming, and they didn't prep. They didn't prepare for this. It's like the bridge closing. They knew one of these days that bridge was going to have to close, and were they prepared to deal with it? No, they weren't. And this time they're screwing up again.
Evan, I want to ask you about your own bridge. I know eventually the goal is permanent housing, but what would you like to see for the transition the rest of the way?
Well, excuse me, I would like to keep it as it is, because I think it's very important for addicts from the street that are active to be able to get in a residential or transitional program just to get clean and mentally well. Because when you're out there using, you're not thinking about housing, you're not thinking about nothing. But when we're put in a place like I've been in, with other positive people that are trying to do better better in their life, they're trying to get a job, and in housing also. Well, this gives us a time, that we can accomplish these things through our case managers, because we have case managers almost for everything. So I would like to see this keep going on further.
Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Edwin Torres and Robert Folan Johnson. In a moment, engaging the arts with a place at the table for the community. We'll hear about a gathering for bread and soup in Roxbury.